I implore you to ensure that you remain within my immediate line of sight. I have absolutely no desire to be tasked with conducting a comprehensive search party in a foreign country, particularly not for individuals who may have perhaps indulged in a bit too much enthusiastic cultural appreciation. Michelle, who had been surreptitiously engaged in a meticulous counting of the coins in her possession, suddenly perked up, her eyes alight with anticipation. Facilities? Does that imply the availability of alcoholic beverages? Sister Michael's response was a carefully orchestrated pause, a moment of charged silence that seemed to hang suspended in the air. It implies the availability of ablutionary conveniences, Michelle, as she stated, her tone impeccably neutral. And perhaps a modest cup of tea. Let us endeavor, shall we, not to conflate robust spiritual fortitude with an inordinate predilection for fermented malt beverages. The service station, upon their arrival, presented itself as a monument to utilitarian functionality, offering a limited selection of lukewarm pies and an assortment of confectionery that bore a striking resemblance to products designed for a dystopian future. The girls, however, perceived it as something of a portal, a brief, precious window of opportunity to stretch their cramped limbs, to inhale air that was not merely recirculated, and to, perhaps, engineer a tactical acquisition of some much-needed caffeine. Erin found herself drawn to a small, unassuming kiosk that displayed a vibrant array of postcards. The colourful depictions of iconic Italian cities, the romantically languid canals of Venice, the ancient, awe-inspiring grandeur of Rome, the sun-drenched splendour of the Amalfi Coast, seemed impossibly alluring, almost fantastical. She selected a postcard featuring a striking image of the Colosseum, a vast, imposing structure bathed in the ethereal golden light of a setting sun. Rome. The very word resonated with a profound sense of destiny, a silent, whispered promise of impending revelation. Her grandfather's letter, its crisp paper a constant, tangible reminder of the unfolding mystery, remained tucked securely within the depths of her bag. Still engaged in profound contemplation of the existential weight of a mere postcard, Erin? Orler's voice, as ever, was a welcome, albeit slightly disconcerting, presence. Her camcorder had now been precisely calibrated to focus on the postcard clutched in Erin's hand. A quintessential symbol of manufactured nostalgia, wouldn't you agree? And yet, undeniably potent. I do wonder, as she mused aloud, her brow furrowed in mock intellectual earnestness, whether future generations will regard these printed missives with the same fond, albeit slightly bewildered, affection they currently reserve for such anachronisms as rotary telephones or dial-up internet connections. Erin responded with a genuine, unforced smile. Perhaps, as she conceded. But it also represents, or a connection. A tangible way of conveying the sentiment, I was present at this location. And at this precise moment in time, the concept of here feels immeasurably distant from the familiar confines of home. Michelle, having successfully procured a rather suspicious-looking energy drink from a nearby vending machine, joined them, her gaze critically scanning the rather limited culinary offerings of the kiosk. Seriously, this entire establishment is a veritable wasteland of edible sustenance, as she declared with palpable dissatisfaction. I'm absolutely famished. Are we entirely certain that Sister Michael doesn't possess a clandestine supply of genuinely palatable crisps somewhere within her personal effects? Or perhaps a discreet flask containing something marginally more potent? Claire, who had been meticulously engaged in the detailed examination of their current route on a folded map, finally looked up, a thoughtful, almost philosophical, expression adorning her face. It's all an integral part of the overarching experience, Michelle, she explained, her voice calm and measured. The inherent austerity. It's meticulously designed to foster a greater appreciation for the comforts we possess. Michelle emitted a derisive snort. Appreciation for what, precisely, as she countered incredulously. The fact that our mode of transportation perpetually smells like a damp canine companion, and we are currently subsisting on a diet composed primarily of unadulterated optimism and excessively priced sugary liquids? Frankly, I would possess a far greater appreciation for a decent, freshly baked croissant at this particular juncture. As they re-embarked upon the bus, the familiar sensation of cramped confinement returned, but it was now subtly infused with a new undercurrent of eager anticipation. The journey had, in earnest, truly commenced. The spiritual cultural mandate, as Sister Michael had so dryly articulated it, was unfolding with all the predictable, yet somehow undeniably endearing, chaos that so characteristically defined their disparate group. Erin, clutching the postcard of the Colosseum, felt it serve as a tangible anchor amidst the swirling currents of her thoughts. Rome. The city of emperors and gladiators, of visionary artists and devout saints, of ancient secrets and divine signs. Her grandfather's legacy, inextricably interwoven with the historical fabric of a place she had never personally witnessed, beckoned her forward. The bus rumbled onward, a vessel carrying them inexorably towards an unknown future, a future that promised not only adventure and revelation but, given their collective proclivities, a substantial and unavoidable dose of outright disaster. Sister Michael, ever the pragmatic and vigilant guardian, would undoubtedly ensure their safe arrival at their destination. But the promised spiritual cultural transformation. The initial days on the road were a kaleidoscope of minor inconveniences and nascent adventures. The bus, a surprisingly resilient beast of burden, navigated winding European roads with a steady, if occasionally jarring, rhythm. Sister Michael maintained her vigil from the front, a silent, watchful sentinel, her pronouncements delivered with the concise brevity of a battlefield commander. Erin, meanwhile, found herself increasingly preoccupied with the contents of her grandfather's study, a task she had undertaken with a mixture of duty and morbid curiosity. It was amidst the chaotic disarray of his bookshelves, a testament to a life lived among stories and ideas, that she'd unearthed the object of her current fascination, a faded, brittle letter, tucked away within the worn pages of an ancient atlas. The atlas itself was a heavy, leather-bound tome, its pages filled with intricate maps of regions that now existed only in history books, its very existence a tangible link to a past that felt increasingly remote. The letter, addressed to no one in particular, bore the unmistakable scrawl of her grandfather, a hand she knew intimately from countless birthday cards and hastily scribbled notes. Yet, the ink seemed faded, as if bleached by time or some unseen force, and the words themselves possessed a peculiar, almost archaic cadence. It wasn't simply a casual missive, it felt imbued with a significance that transcended the mundane. She remembered the moment of discovery vividly. The dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that slanted through the grimy study window, illuminating the clutter of books, papers, and forgotten trinkets that constituted her grandfather's intellectual sanctuary. She had been meticulously sifting through his collection of atlases, searching for a misplaced volume of Irish folklore, when her fingers brushed against something unexpectedly tucked between the stiff pages of the atlas detailing the Roman Empire. It was a single sheet of parchment, yellowed and brittle with age. Her grandfather, a man of routine and predictable habits, was not one for clandestine correspondence, and this discovery immediately piqued her curiosity. Unfolding it carefully, she'd been struck by the unusual phrasing. It wasn't the straightforward, if occasionally gruff, prose she was accustomed to. Instead, the sentences seemed deliberately enigmatic, laced with obscure references that meant little to her in her current context. "My dearest Erin," the letter began, the opening line itself an anomaly, as her grandfather rarely employed such effusive salutations. The currents of time are not always as they appear on the surface. There are tides that run deeper, pulling us towards shores unseen. Should this missive find its way to you, know that the journey ahead is not merely one of distance, but of discovery. Seek the echo of the vespertine bells, and listen for the lament of the stone sentinel. The Italian phrase, aspetta e vedrai, meaning await and see, it was the most perplexing element of all. Her grandfather had no known connections to Italy, no discernible fondness for Italian culture, and certainly no fluency in the language. Yet, here it was, a stark, enigmatic imperative embedded within the very fabric of his last known communication. The mention of a vespertine bells and the stone sentinel added further layers to the mystery, conjuring images of ancient cities and forgotten lore, a stark contrast to the familiar, comforting landscape of Derry. Erin reread the letter several times, the faded ink blurring before her eyes as she struggled to decipher its true meaning. Was this merely the ramblings of an aging man, his mind perhaps clouded by illness or the proximity of his own mortality? Or was it a deliberate, albeit cryptic, message, a breadcrumb trail leading her towards a hidden truth, a secret chapter of his life that had remained concealed until this very moment? The bus journey offered the perfect, albeit unintentional, environment for such introspection. The rhythmic monotony of the road, punctuated by the occasional jolt and the muffled chatter of her companions, provided a cocoon of sorts, allowing her mind to wander freely. She thought of her grandfather, a man she had loved dearly, a man whose life, she now realized, might have held more secrets than she had ever imagined. His funeral had been a somber affair, a necessary punctuation mark in the ongoing narrative of her life. But this letter, this peculiar artifact unearthed from the dusty recesses of his study, felt like the true beginning of a new chapter, a chapter that promised to unfold far beyond the familiar confines of Derry. The phrase aspetta e vedrai kept echoing in her mind, a soft, persistent whisper. Wait and see. But for what? And why? The European adventure, initially conceived as a post-funeral distraction, a way to escape the suffocating familiarity of grief, now seemed imbued with a far greater purpose. This trip, this chaotic, improbable pilgrimage, might very well be directly linked to the cryptic message left behind by her grandfather. The possibility sent a shiver of excitement, mingled with a healthy dose of apprehension, through her. She imagined her grandfather, perhaps years ago, embarking on a similar journey, seeking out the same signs, deciphering the same enigmatic clues. Was there a hidden legacy waiting to be uncovered, a story that had been deliberately passed down to her through this oblique, yet compelling, means? She discreetly pulled the letter from her pocket, smoothing out the creases with her fingertips. The paper felt fragile, almost ephemeral, a physical manifestation of the past slipping through her grasp. The faded ink seemed to hold the weight of unspoken words, of forgotten memories. The mention of Rome, a city she had only ever encountered in books and films, now felt like a destination not of chance, but of destiny.